Is your voice talking on the phone?
Well, yes, it is. But I'm not a murderer.
She was a cold, calculated person who pushed people to their limits.
And all of a sudden, she pulls out a knife.
She's holding it like this.
She just stabs herself in the legs.
She's charming, she's fun, she's lively, and she tells you just enough truth mixed in with her lies that they become believable. She's fascinating.
This footage seems like any other. A couple of proud parents are in the stands, and they are cheering on their kids on the stage. But what you will not realize about this footage is that it also hides a haunting secret. A secret of deceit, passion, and crime. The couple cheering here is Celeste and Steven Beard. They are attending the high school graduation of their twin daughters Jennifer and Kristina. The woman sitting alone in front of them is Tracey Tarlton. She looks happy and very supportive of the twins, but in reality, she is biding her time and waiting to strike. Who is she to them, and how will she change the family dynamic forever? This is the survivor story of Jennifer and Kristina Beard. The story begins in 1993. At the time, 13-year-old Kristina had been separated from her identical twin sister. She lived in Austin, Texas, with her mother, Celeste, and her stepfather, Steven, while Jennifer resided in Washington State with their biological father, Craig. After their divorce, the twins' parents engaged in a protracted custody dispute that resulted in the girls being split between the two of them. Being each other's best friends, it is easy to understand how difficult it was for the girls to be hundreds of miles apart.
I missed her a lot. I missed Jen a whole lot. We were built-in friends with each other.
I would not know how to be a regular sibling. You know, it's always been nice to have someone that knows exactly what I'm going through. It was definitely hard not to have my other half.
Forward to July of 1996. The twins have finally decided to take a summer trip together to reunite at their grandparents' home in California after 3 years of living apart. Since it's their first time together in more than 2 years, they are incredibly excited.
And I never skipped a beat.
Laughing so hard that we were crying, and I just couldn't believe that we were actually back together again.
When Jennifer tries to call their father Craig to let him know they've arrived safely, no one picks up the phone. This is when their happy situation takes a dark turn. They call their father repeatedly, but receive no response. After going 2 days without communication, the twins learn that their father was found dead in his home and had left behind a handwritten letter. It explained all of his silent struggles over the years, but still, his daughters could not help but wonder why he would choose to leave them.
Felt like I died that day.
They are in shock, the twins. Their brief 2-week reunion was now extended as Jennifer abruptly moved in with Kristina, Celeste, and their new stepfather, Steven Beard, in Austin, Texas. Jennifer initially found the transition difficult, but when she met Steve Beard, her new stepdad, she was pleasantly surprised by how hospitable and loving he was, as he made sure to pay close attention to his new stepdaughter. The new blended family, from the outside, seemed to be leading a happy life after years of coexisting. The sisters are in their senior year of high school, and for once, they have a reliable father figure. The twins were even formally adopted by Steven, who gave them each a unique family ring to seal the bond.
He just gave it to us after he adopted us, and we thought it was the coolest thing.
I mean, I was definitely moved that he had this special ring made, and I mean, just the adoption alone, you know, I felt pretty connected to him.
However, on October 2, 1999, at 2:30 a.m., everything would change. Kristina is back at Steven's house, like any other night, sleeping in bed, while Jennifer was out with her boyfriend. Kristina's bedroom door suddenly swung open. The lights come on, and her mother rushes through the door and yells, "Someone's at the door." Kristina is stunned, but manages to get out of bed and head towards the front door, where she notices flashing lights that are very bright. She is shocked because she has no idea who is outside or what they are looking for. In that state of panic, Kristina rushes to the phone and dials 911. She alerts them of the situation, from the knocks at their front door to the sirens and flashing lights all over their house. Kristina learns from the 911 operator that the individuals outside are actually the police. Apparently, someone else inside the home had called 911 just a few moments earlier.
What is going on there?
I'm in bed.
How did
Got an awful face.
Okay, are you there by yourself?
My
might be somewhere in the house. I can't find her.
Kristina rushes to the front door to let the police inside.
I open the front door and it's cops. And they're like, "Is your dad home?" And I said, "Yeah, he's upstairs."
Kristina quickly ran to the front door to let them in.
And it's cops. And they're like, "Is your dad home?" And I said, "Yeah, he's upstairs."
As her mother frantically runs after them, Kristina and the police hastily make their way to her stepfather's bedroom. Steve was in bad shape. Quick action and emergency medical care were required if there was any hope for Steven to survive. Steve was losing a lot of blood, despite the paramedics' best efforts to stabilize him. He is rushed to the hospital, but then one of the police officers makes a startling discovery. On the floor next to his bed, there is a shotgun shell.
"Are you telling me he was shot?" And they said, "Yes." And I just couldn't believe it.
As Steve is being transported to the nearby hospital by air, Kristina makes a call to her sister to update her on the situation. The crime scene at the Beard residence is cordoned off as the detectives continue to conduct the routine walkthrough. All evidence points to a side door that was left unlocked. It appears to have been used by someone to enter Steve's bedroom, where he was shot. Before they can start looking into their theory, they must first collect DNA samples from everyone and everything, including any family members who might have been present when the crime was committed. The samples were taken from Kristina, Jennifer, and their mother Celeste. The girls were perplexed, but Kristina remembered a peculiar event from that evening. Suddenly, Celeste whispers to her, "If the police ask you who might have done this, don't mention Tracey's name."
That first off, Steve had been shot, but I wouldn't have even thought who could have done it. I was wondering if it was burglar or random, but as soon as we walked out of the house, Celeste whispers to me, "If the police ask you who might have done this, don't mention Tracey's name."
Why would Celeste say don't mention Tracey's name?
6 months prior to the night of the attack, Celeste had a chance encounter with Tracey Tarlton, who was 45 years old. She oversaw a neighborhood bookstore in Austin, and they quickly became good friends. She frequently received invitations from the twins' mother to dinner parties and birthday celebrations. She was even present at their high school graduation.
Weird friendship.
I just remember thinking that this lady wants more from our mom than just a platonic relationship.
In an effort to make sense of what is happening, the twins are en route to the hospital. They are perplexed because their mother had warned them not to bring up Tracey, but this only fuels their suspicions.
She's protecting Tracey because she thought it was Tracey.
After getting to the hospital and talking to the detectives, they asked me, who do I believe shot my father? And I said, my mom doesn't want me to mention this, but I'm not supposed to say Tracey Tarlton.
As a result, Tracey Tarlton becomes the focus of the investigation. However, there's a problem. Detectives believe someone else was involved because there was no clear motive as to why Tracey would hurt Steve. Based on the available evidence, which is the 20-gauge shotgun shell, the exact bullet that had wounded Steven Beard, the police swiftly obtained a search warrant for Tracey Tarlton's home. They then made their way to Tracey Tarlton's house and rapped on her door. The question of whether Miss Tarlton owned a shotgun was raised, to which she replied, yes, she reluctantly consented when they asked if they could see it. She gave them a 20-gauge franchise shotgun that had her name engraved on it. After seizing the shotgun, law enforcement brought it in for additional examination. Everyone is left waiting for news from the detectives for days, until they finally have the findings.
Turns out to be the shotgun from which the bullet that injured Mr. Beard was fired from.
Tracey Tarlton was detained and charged with attempted murder on October 8, 1999, 5 days after Steven Beard was shot. But the authorities are not satisfied. They are aware that there is more to this story than what they have learned so far, because Tracey won't explain why she did this. Detectives keep questioning Tracey because they think she wasn't acting alone, and there might be another person responsible who is currently at large, but she won't answer any of them. Steven was in the hospital for a while. Sadly, Steve succumbed to his gunshot wounds after a grueling few months of fighting for his life with the twins by his side.
We loved Steve. He never wanted us to worry about anything. He just wanted us to be loved and enjoy our lives.
Coming from Washington State, losing my father, he filled that role for me that I'll never forget.
The sisters are left with pain and even more questions as they struggle to deal with their father's passing. Their mother, Celeste, tries to be there for them. She engages them in preparation for the funeral and even lets them join her to purchase a casket for him. However, the twins were not prepared for what would happen next. Celeste proposed to purchase 2 pink coffins for her daughters.
Lost a loved one.
And while we were there, she purchased 2 pink caskets for Jen and I. And she's like, I'm gonna get these for you guys.
They were perplexed and alarmed by Celeste's suggestion that her children, who were 18 at the time, choose their funeral caskets. They were unable to help but feel that something was strange.
Back in my mind, I thought, well, am I going in this casket soon?
The story of Steven Beard makes it to the local newspapers and television networks. Everyone following the progress of the case grew concerned that the real murderer might still be at large. The investigators are, however, at a standstill because they lacked solid proof. Meanwhile, the twins notice their mother's behavior is getting stranger and more erratic in the midst of it all. They would occasionally catch Celeste just laughing while they were crying or acting emotionally.
Crazy eyes.
Kind of manic, very loud and emotional, but didn't really seem real.
Come the 16th of February in the year 2000, nobody could have predicted what lay ahead for the 2 young twins. Out of the blue, their mother comes up to them that day and says, "Hey, why don't we all kill ourselves?" All of a sudden, Celeste took out a knife and extended it in a threatening manner.
Then said, hey, why don't we all kill ourselves?
And all of a sudden, she pulls out a knife.
She's holding it like this, and she goes to like kind of lunge.
She just stabs herself in the leg.
Blood starts gushing everywhere.
I was just like, what is happening?
In a state of panic, the twins dial 911 and beg for help for their mother. As soon as the ambulance pulls up, the paramedics jump right to work on her to stop her leg from bleeding. The girls watch in disbelief as their mother is swiftly loaded into an ambulance and taken to the nearby hospital. While still in the hospital over the following weeks, Celeste kept calling her daughters. With each call, Celeste got crazier and more disturbing each time.
And screaming at me over the phone.
Would go from normal to screaming, back to normal.
That's when Kristina gets an idea that will ultimately provide the proof needed for detectives to identify Steve Beard's real killer.
I'm gonna start recording her conversations because I want to play them back to her, and she'll then hear, like, from my perspective what I'm hearing and think, oh, that's awful, I can't believe I'd do that.
You will be sorry.
But just as Kristina was about to stop recording, Celeste said something crucial that completely altered the course of the investigation. In her own words,
Ever.
She says, I hired somebody to kill Tracey. I froze. It made it all real, and it made it all unsafe.
the twins were gripped with fear. They realized that their mother's frequent, strange, and violent outbursts, like the pink coffin she had purchased, were all pointing to one thing. Their mother was a dangerous person, and they were going to be next on her list if the suspicious death of their father and her current murderous scheme against Tracey were to be considered.
Sealed it for me. Like any sort of doubt that I ever had that Celeste was involved with our father's murder, I don't have anymore.
From there, things only got worse. The twins were in greater danger than ever after their mother was discharged from the hospital. The only way for Jennifer and Kristina to survive at that point was to hide from their mother and make sure she could not find them. Kristina and Jennifer were able to flee without leaving a trace. Jennifer cleared out her bank account, and they began to stay in motels and carried out all actions using only cash. In the meantime, Celeste was trying to find them. It was unquestionably the most terrifying time they had ever experienced. From that point forward, they were aware there was no turning back.
Every day trying to find us. All I kept replaying in my head was we are in danger. It was definitely terrifying. Like, we're not coming home from this.
Knowing they were armed with the recorded conversations of their mother's threats, the twins approached the police in order to obtain a family violence protective order. Thankfully, it was granted. The police now had the recordings, but still needed something to have a rock-solid case. Only Tracey Tarlton could confirm their suspicions that their mother was responsible for their stepdad's demise. Tracey knew this, but she chose to remain silent the entire time. Tracey, who was in jail, awaiting a trial for her part in Steve's murder, remained silent until she read in the newspaper in March 2002 that the twins had received a family violence protective order against their mother. At this precise time, Tracey finally made the decision to work with the police by telling them the real reason behind her actions. This is the information that investigators have been waiting for since the night of the murder. She finally admitted that Celeste was the mastermind behind the crime and that she did not kill Steve on her own. Investigators finally had enough evidence to arrest Celeste for capital murder on the 28th of March, 2002, thanks to Tracey's crucial statement and the twins' damning audio recordings. However, a lot of work still needed to be done if they stood a chance of proving her guilt to the jury beyond a reasonable doubt.
If she doesn't go to jail, I was going to be living underground forever, and I wasn't going to feel safe until she was in jail. With her on the street, nobody's safe.
In an effort to bring their mother down and make sure she is never released from prison, the twins start working with the police, attorneys, and the shooter Tracey Tarlton. The trial for Celeste Beard officially began on the 3rd of February in 2003. The sisters had to take a stand in front of their own mother, and it was not easy because, after all she had said and done, they were understandably frightened to be in the same room as her.
The same room with her. I was afraid, oh my gosh, how do I stay strong enough to not waver?
Worst thing I've ever had to do in my life is see Celeste staring back at me when I had to sit on the stand and testify to everything that I knew she did.
On the one hand, they understood that she was still their mother. But on the other, they understood that Steve deserved justice. And perhaps most importantly, they understood that if their mother was not convicted, they would never truly feel safe. The twins testified in court that their mother had serious mental health issues throughout their entire lives, which led to violent outbursts and a traumatizing childhood in general. Jennifer also revealed that Celeste married Steve Beard, a 69-year-old multi-millionaire retired TV executive, not out of love, but in order to access his sizable inheritance.
Feelings about Steve Beard? Well, she said that she married Steve for his money.
Did she tell you about what would happen if Steve Beard died?
That she would get it all. She would say, why wouldn't he die already?
Did it appear that she was looking forward to that, or?
Yes.
The investigators also proved that Celeste spent her husband's money on a variety of clothing, jewelry, and expensive artworks within the first 6 months of their marriage, spending over $500,000. Surprisingly, the twins recalled how they noticed Celeste used to drug Steve. She would slip sleeping pills into his food and would sneak out of the house after he dozed off. This happened on multiple occasions, according to the girls. Celeste also experienced a psychotic break in February 1999, 8 months before the murder of Steven Beard. She grabbed a gun, pointed it at her own head, and started yelling death threats at Kristina. After that incident, she was checked into the St. David's Psychiatric Mental Hospital in Austin, Texas. And it was while residing at that mental health facility that Celeste met Tracey Tarlton. Their mother began to pay her a lot of attention right away, spending a lot of time with her, and eventually growing to be very close and intimate with her. After gaining Tracey's trust, Celeste was able to execute her true strategy because she could now control her. She persuaded Tracey that she desired a sexual encounter with her.
The sexual relationship with me, which I also want.
Additionally, she also planted the narrative that Steve was a violent spouse. All of this was just Celeste setting Tracey up to kill for her. Tracey truly believed that Celeste was in trouble. However, the truth was that Celeste had never even liked Tracey Tarlton. She was simply willing to go out of her way to have a lesbian relationship with her if it could get her what she wanted.
This woman that I love, in a desperate situation, trying to find a way to survive this man that was so awful.
Tracey herself testified that when Celeste said, "I cannot live any longer with this abusive husband," she just had the urge to intervene. Steve wasn't violent though. It was all a part of Celeste's evil scheme. In front of the twins and the jury, Tracey explained Celeste's strategy for killing her husband in court. Apparently, Steve was too healthy, which made Celeste grow angry over time. She had initially assumed he was an elderly man who would pass away soon when she married him.
Not soon enough, she had a plan, and she wanted me to shoot him with my shotgun. Showed me where to enter the grounds, where to park, and then we walked through how I would exit my car, where I would enter the house, how I would approach the bedroom.
Tracey explained how Celeste gave her specific instructions on where to park, where to enter the house, and how to return to her car. Tracey also admitted that she carried out the plan and shot Steve once before leaving. Eyewitnesses observed that while Tracey was testifying, Celeste would occasionally shake her head or even chuckle at some things. However, when it was time for her own daughters to take the stand, her countenance changed and her expressions were colder. The audio recording of her murderous plot against Tracey and her reoccurring threats against the girls was one of the most damning pieces of evidence they had to reveal. The trial continued for several weeks before ending on the 19th of March, 2003, when the jury returned with its decision after 3 days of deliberation. Breaths were held in the courtroom that day. The jury had the power to decide whether Celeste would continue to serve time for the murder of her husband, or if she would be set free to most likely haunt the twins for the rest of their lives.
The courtroom who feels that they may have an emotional outburst, I would ask that you please leave the courtroom at this time. Ms. Johns, would you please stand?
Truly, we've been waiting for this for 3 years now. And so, yeah, it's very emotional, and you can't really know what 12 people that you've never met, what they're going to do.
Madam Foreperson, please read the entire
State versus Celeste Beard Johnson. Verdict of the jury. Verdict form 1, capital murder. We, the jury, find the defendant, Celeste Beard Johnson, guilty of the offense of capital murder.
Well, I had a flood of emotions. You know, I wasn't expecting to get so worked up. She is our mom, and it's just like she's going to jail for the rest of her life.
The sisters were relieved to get justice for the murder of their father. As the trial comes to a close, Kristina again bravely takes the witness stand. But this time she addresses her mother in person to put an end to the fear she has been experiencing for more than 2 years.
Except love you. And this is how you treated us, like trash. You say we turned on you, but you turned on us. You turned on the whole Beard family. He let you into his home, loved you, honored, obeyed you, and you violated him and murdered him. You are guilty. Shame on you.
Celeste Beard was given 2 consecutive sentences of 40 years in prison, with no chance of parole until she is 79 years old. Now that they are no longer required to remain in hiding, the twins have the opportunity to fully live their lives. After the hearing was over, Tracey made a request to speak with the twins and expressed her regret for her part in their suffering.
I was sitting in a room with the person that actually pulled the trigger. She said that she felt really guilty for killing our father and that she was really sorry. I remember that.
She thought she was agreeing to kill an evil man. I feel really bad for her. I could really relate with the fact that she was a victim here too.
The twins claim that this sincere act of forgiveness sparked the start of a protracted healing process for them. 20 years after the trial, their sisterly relationship has only gotten stronger.
Kristina's my strength. We don't live close to each other, but any chance we can get to go visit each other, we will.
Jennifer, now 42, enjoys her job and focuses on her mental health, while Kristina is a wife and devoted mother of 2 kids. She is pleased to provide for her children the love, care, attention, and nurturing she never experienced as a child.
Like, I wish I got to.
In the end, they were able to build fulfilling lives, ultimately serving as living examples of the possibility of happiness, even in the face of tragedy.